The boardroom was silent, except for the soft hum of the air conditioner. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling glass walls, illuminating the skyline of Charlotte. The city spread out below us, a map of steel and ambition. I stood at the head of a long, polished oak table, my voice steady as I concluded my presentation. By reallocating the initial capital to secure the downtown sector first, we not only maximize our immediate return on investment, but we also establish a dominant market presence before our competitors can react. My words felt solid, confident. They belonged to me. Mr. Julian Croft, the CEO, sat at the opposite end of the table. He leaned back in his leather chair, a faint, approving smile on his face. "Excellent work, Elena," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Concise, strategic, and aggressive. I like it." A wave of quiet satisfaction washed over me. I gave a small nod, gathering my notes. As I did, my eyes drifted past the boardroom, out into the hallway, and that's when I saw him. Michael. He was standing there, his shoulders slumped, his suit looking a size too big for his tired frame. He wasn't the man I once knew. He was a ghost, haunting a world he no longer belonged to. His eyes found mine through the glass. There was no anger in his gaze, no resentment, just a deep, hollow ache that I recognized all too well. It was the look of a man who had lost everything and knew exactly why. I held his gaze for a moment, my expression calm, my heart steady. Then I turned back to the table, back to my new life. But that was a world away, a lifetime away. Before the glass walls and the power suits, there was only the soft, damp earth of Hollow Creek. 1 year earlier, my world was small, and I thought it was perfect. It was contained within the green embrace of the Appalachian Mountains in West Virginia. It smelled of pine needles after a summer rain and the rich soil in my vegetable garden. My universe revolved around a small, white house with a porch swing, the gentle babble of the creek that gave our town its name, and the sound of my 6-year-old daughter's laughter. "Mommy, look, this one's all red," Lily shouted, holding up a ripe tomato like a precious ruby. Her face, smudged with dirt, was beaming. I smiled, wiping a bead of sweat from my forehead with the back of my hand. "It's beautiful, sweetie, just like you. Let's get a few more for the sauce tonight." Our life was simple, woven from threads of routine and love. While my husband, Michael, worked in the city, Lily and I kept the heart of our home beating. Michael was a project manager for a big construction firm in Charlotte. He was smart and hardworking, a man from a small town who was making a name for himself in a big city. He was our hero, the provider who was building a future for us from 4 hours away. That evening, as the fireflies began to dance in the twilight, the phone rang. It was Michael. His voice, usually a warm comfort, sounded tired. "Hey, you," I said softly, stepping out onto the porch. Lily was inside, happily drawing at the kitchen table. "Hey, Lena," he sighed. "Long day. You worked hard. Mike, you need to rest." He was silent for a moment. I could picture him, rubbing the back of his neck, the way he always did when he was stressed. "I can't," he said finally. "I was with Chloe today, taking her to sort out some more of David's paperwork. She's a mess." Chloe. The name hung in the air between us, a constant, sad presence in our lives. David had been Michael's best friend, his colleague. A year ago, there had been a terrible accident at a construction site, a scaffolding collapse. David had shoved Michael out of the way, saving his life but losing his own. The guilt had eaten away at Michael ever since. "How is she?" I asked, my voice filled with genuine sympathy. I had never met her, but I felt for her, a young widow with a 7-year-old son. "Mason. She's trying to be strong, but she's just lost," Michael said. "She doesn't know how to handle anything. The insurance money, the bills, the house." She looks at a form and just starts crying. I had to promise David I'd look after her and Mason. I can't break that promise. "Lena, I just can't." "I know you can't," I reassured him. "You're a good man, Michael, the best man I know." And I meant it. His loyalty, his sense of duty, it was part of why I loved him. It was what made him my Michael. "The company gave me the new apartment," he continued, changing the subject. "It's nice, 2 bedrooms, but it's still not big enough for all of us right now. Chloe and Mason are staying with me. The boy is taking his dad's death hard. And Chloe, she can't be alone. A familiar ache settled in my chest. For years he had been in Charlotte, working his way up. For 4 years, I had been waiting. Waiting for the promotion. Waiting for the bigger house. Waiting for the day he would finally bring us there with him. I know. Mike, I said, forcing a cheerful tone. We'll be there soon. Lily misses you something fierce. I miss you guys too. More than you know. He said, his voice thick with emotion. I put all my direct deposits into that new joint account I set up for us. Everything I earn is going in there. So when you and Lily come up, we'll have a nice nest egg to start with. Just give me a little more time. Chloe needs me right now. We have time. I whispered, watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky. We'll be right here. I hung up the phone with a heavy heart. But my faith in him was unshakable. My Michael had a heart too big for his own good. He was carrying the weight of his friend's death and the responsibility of a promise. My job was to be his anchor, to keep her home safe and warm until he could finally come back to it. The next few weeks passed in a blur of late summer heat. The creek ran low, and the air grew thick and heavy. On the old radio in the kitchen, the weather report started talking about a storm system moving in from the south. Heavy rains expected. The announcer droned. Flash flood warnings are in effect for low-lying areas. I didn't think much of it. We were used to summer storms in the mountains. They were violent but brief. But this one was different. It started with a drizzle that quickly became a relentless downpour. The sky turned a bruised purple-gray, and the wind howled through the pines. That night, Lily developed a cough. A small, dry cough at first. I gave her some honey and lemon and tucked her into bed, putting it down to a summer cold. By morning, the rain was a deafening roar. The creek, usually a gentle stream, had become a raging, muddy torrent. It was climbing its banks, swallowing the wildflowers and creeping closer and closer to our small garden. Lily's cough had gotten worse. It was a harsh, barking sound that tore at her small chest. Her forehead was burning with fever. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prickle at the edges of my calm. I tried to call the town doctor, but the phone line was dead. The power flickered, then died completely, plunging the house into a gloomy twilight. Mommy, Lily wheezed from the couch, where I had wrapped her in every blanket we owned. I can't breathe good. I looked at her, truly looked at her, and my blood ran cold. Her small lips had a bluish tinge, and her chest was heaving with effort, a terrible rattling sound coming from deep inside. This wasn't a cold. This was something else, something dangerous. The water was seeping under the front door now, pooling on the wooden floor. The road out of town would be flooded. We were trapped. My mind raced, scrambling for a solution. The hospital. I had to get her to a real hospital. The one in the next county was small, but the big one, the good one, was in Charleston, over an hour away. No, Charlotte. Charlotte had the best hospitals, and Charlotte had Michael. I had to get to Michael. The rain finally eased in the late afternoon, leaving behind a world of mud and debris. The creek was receding, but the road was a mess. My old pickup truck, however, was built for this. It was a tough, stubborn machine, just like the people who drove them in these mountains. I packed a small bag, bundled a feverish Lily into the passenger seat, and started the engine. The journey was a nightmare. I navigated washed-out roads and fallen trees, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, my eyes constantly darting to my daughter. Her breathing was shallow, a terrifying whistle with every exhale. We made it to the county hospital just after dark. The emergency room was chaotic, filled with people injured from the storm. A tired-looking doctor took one look at Lily, and his face grew grim. "It's our SV," he said, after listening to her lungs. "Respiratory syncytial virus. It's hitting kids hard this year. Her oxygen levels are dangerously low. We don't have a pediatric ICU here. She needs to be transferred to a larger facility immediately, one with a ventilator, just in case." "Charlotte," I said, my voice trembling. "Can you get her to a hospital in Charlotte?" He nodded. "We can arrange an ambulance, but you need to handle the admission and insurance. It's going to be expensive." Expensive. The word echoed in my head. But for the first time in days, a sliver of relief cut through the fear. The money. The joint account Michael had set up. He had been saving for years. Of course there would be enough. He had told me himself. While they prepared Lily for the transfer, I found the hospital's business office. I handed the clerk the debit card Michael had sent me months ago. I need to make a deposit for my daughter. Lily, I said, my voice steadier now. I'm not sure how much you need, but just take what you need for now. The clerk, a woman with kind eyes, swiped the card. She frowned. She swiped it again. I'm sorry, ma'am, she said gently. The transaction was declined. Declined? I repeated, confused. That can't be right. Try it again. It's a new account. Maybe there's a glitch. She tried a third time. The same result. It says insufficient funds. Insufficient funds? I laughed. A raw, humorless sound. That's impossible. My husband's salary for the last 4 years has gone into that account. There has to be tens of thousands of dollars in there. Her expression was full of pity. I can check the balance for you, if you'd like. Yes, please, I said, my heart starting to pound against my ribs. She typed for a moment, her eyes on the screen. When she looked back at me, her kind eyes were filled with sorrow. Ma'am, she said, her voice barely a whisper. The current balance is $117. The world tilted. The fluorescent lights of the office seemed to dim, and the woman's voice faded into a dull roar. $117. Not 10,000. Not 5,000. 117. The number was an insult. A joke. A lie. My mind refused to accept it. It was a mistake. A bank error. Michael would fix it. I stumbled out of the office, pulling out my phone. I dialed his number, my hands shaking so badly I could barely press the screen. It rang once, twice, 3 times, then went to voicemail. You've reached Michael. Leave a message. I tried again. Voicemail. And again. Voicemail. A paramedic came up to me. Ma'am, we're ready to transport your daughter. I looked at him, then back at my phone, at the blank screen that represented my empty hope. The lie wasn't the bank's. The lie was his. And as the ambulance doors closed, with my daughter fighting for every breath inside, I knew I was utterly, terrifyingly alone. The promise of a nest egg, the security for our future, it was all smoke. There was no safety net. There was only me, the muddy clothes I was wearing, and $117 to my name. The ambulance ride to Charlotte was a blur of flashing lights, and the rhythmic whoosh of the oxygen machine keeping my daughter alive. I sat huddled in the corner, Lily's small hand lost in mine, my phone clutched in the other. I must have called Michael 20 times. Each call was a desperate prayer sent out into the silent, indifferent night. Each time, his cheerful voicemail message felt like a slap in the face. We arrived at the Levine Children's Hospital just before dawn. It was a world away from the small county clinic. It was a towering building of glass and steel, gleaming and sterile. They whisked Lily away to the pediatric intensive care unit, a place of hushed efficiency and the constant, soft beeping of machines. A kind nurse explained that they were putting Lily in a special oxygen tent, and that the doctor would be in to speak with me soon. I was left alone in a small, antiseptic waiting room. The silence was deafening. The panic that had been a roaring fire inside me had burned down to cold, hard dread. Where was he? Even if the account was empty, why wasn't he answering his phone? What could be more important than his daughter's life? With trembling fingers, I sold the last thing of value I had left me, grandmother's gold locket, the one I had planned to give to Lily on her 16th birthday. I did it online, through a pawn shop app, for a fraction of its worth. It was enough to cover the initial deposit for the hospital. It was a gut-wrenching transaction, severing a tie to my past to buy a few more hours for my daughter's future. Finally, just as the sun was beginning to cast long shadows across the city, my phone buzzed. It was Michael. I answered on the first ring, a torrent of frantic words spilling out of me. Michael, it's Lily. She's sick. She has her SV. We're in Charlotte at the Children's Hospital. She's in the ICU and the account. Mike, the account is empty. There's no money. How? Slow down. Lena. His voice cut in, thick with sleep. He sounded groggy, annoyed. What are you talking about? What hospital? Levine Children's Hospital. She couldn't breathe. Mike. The floods, the doctor said it was serious. I tried to use the card you gave me, and they said there was only $100 in it. Where is the money? There was a long pause. I could hear rustling on the other end, the sound of bed sheets. Then another voice. A woman's voice, soft and sleepy. Mike. What's wrong? My blood froze. It was Chloe. Nothing. Go back to sleep. Michael mumbled. His voice muffled. He spoke to me again. His tone now sharp. Defensive. Look. I don't know what's going on with the account. It must be a bank error. I'll sort it out. Where are you? I'll come down. He didn't ask how Lily was. He didn't ask if I was okay. His first reaction was to defend. To deflect. The sleepy sound of Chloe's voice was a stake through my heart. He wasn't in his own apartment. He was with her. An hour later. He walked into the waiting room. He looked disheveled. Wearing yesterday's clothes. He reeked of stale cologne and something else. A woman's perfume. Lena. He started. His eyes avoiding mine. How is she? She's fighting. I said. My voice flat. Devoid of the emotion I was feeling. The doctors are doing everything they can. Good. That's good. He said, running a hand through his messy hair. About the money, look. Chloe's been having a really hard time. A really hard time. She had some unexpected expenses with Mason school and some repairs on David's car. I told her she could use the account if she needed to. I guess she needed to more than I realized. I was going to tell you. The excuse was so flimsy. So pathetic. It was almost laughable. She used it all? All of our savings for 4 years? On school expenses and car repairs? You let her use our family's savings? I asked. My voice dangerously quiet. It's not like that. He insisted. His voice rising. I owe David. I owe her. You don't understand the guilt I live with every single day. Lena. She's all alone. She has no one. She has you? Apparently. I shot back. The dam of my composure finally breaking. She had you in her bed this morning while your daughter was fighting for her life, and your wife was stranded with no money. His face paled. It's not what you think. Isn't it? I stood up. The exhaustion and fear of the last 48 hours coalescing into a cold, hard rage. Where have you been? Michael, where were you when I was calling you over and over? Was comforting a grieving widow so important that you couldn't answer the phone for your wife? For your child? Before he could answer, a woman appeared in the doorway of the waiting room. It was Chloe. She was beautiful. In a fragile, elegant way. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled. Her makeup immaculate despite the early hour. She was wearing an expensive-looking trench coat over silk pajamas. She looked like she belonged in a magazine, not a hospital waiting room. She rushed to Michael's side, her eyes wide with a practiced look of concern. Oh, Michael. I came as soon as I heard. I am so sorry, she said. Her voice a soft, trembling whisper. She turned to me, tears welling in her eyes. Elena, I am so terribly sorry. It's all my fault. The money, I was just so overwhelmed. I saw the bills, and I panicked. I never meant to take so much. I didn't know. She was a masterful actress. Every word, every gesture was perfectly calculated to paint her as a tragic, helpless victim. She clung to Michael's arm, looking up at him as if he were her savior. And Michael, my husband, fell for it completely. He wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. It's not your fault, Chloe, he said, glaring at me over her head. It was an emergency. You did what you had to do. He was comforting her, while her daughter lay in an ICU bed just a few feet away. He was comforting the woman who had spent all of our money. I looked from his face to hers, and for the first time, I saw them clearly. This wasn't about a promise. It wasn't about guilt. This was something else. This was a betrayal so deep and so complete that it stole the very air from my lungs. A doctor chose that moment to enter the waiting room. Mr. and Mrs. Reed, he asked, looking between us. I'm Eleanor Reed, I said, stepping forward, leaving Michael and Chloe behind me. This is my husband. The doctor gave Michael a brief nod. Your daughter is stable for now, but the next 24 hours are critical. We're doing everything we can. I need one of you to come with me to sign some consent forms for her treatment plan. I'll go, I said immediately, not even looking back at Michael. As I followed the doctor down the hall, I could hear Chloe's soft sobs behind me. I heard Michael murmuring words of comfort to her. Not to me. Not for our daughter. For her. In that moment, something inside me shifted. The loving, trusting wife from Hollow Creek died in that sterile hospital corridor. She was replaced by a woman fueled by a cold, quiet fury. A mother who would do anything to save her child. My fight was no longer just against a virus. It was against the man I had married. And the woman who had stolen my life. I signed the forms. My hand steady. When I returned to the waiting room, they were gone. He had left. He had chosen to take her home. To comfort her. Leaving me alone once again. But this time, I wasn't just alone. I was armed. I was armed with the terrible, clarifying power of the truth. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Michael. I'm sorry. Things are complicated. I'll transfer you some money later today. Don't worry about the hospital bills. I didn't reply. I sat down in the plastic chair, the hospital sounds fading into the background. I thought about my little house in Hollow Creek. My garden. The simple life I had loved. It was all gone. A dream I had woken up from. My new reality was this cold, impersonal room, and the fight that lay ahead. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I would not lose. Later that afternoon, a notification popped up on my phone. A deposit of $5,000 had been made to my personal savings account. It wasn't from Michael's account. It was a wire transfer from an account under the name Chloe Saunders. She was paying me off, using what was left of my own money to buy my silence. The insult was so profound. It was almost elegant. I looked at the notification, and a slow, cold smile spread across my face. She thought $5,000 could fix this. She thought she could erase her guilt and keep my husband with a simple bank transfer. She had no idea who she was dealing with. I found a cheap motel a few blocks from the hospital. That night, after spending hours by Lily's bedside, I sat on the lumpy bed and made a plan. The old Elena would have taken the money, cried herself to sleep, and waited for her husband to come to his senses. The new Elena was going to war. The next morning, I walked out of that motel and into the gleaming lobby of Croft Development. I wasn't there to see Michael. I was there to see his boss. But I didn't go to the executive floor. I started at the bottom. I found my way to the Human Resources Department. I sat down with a kind-faced woman and told her a story. It was a carefully edited version of the truth. I was a loyal wife from out of town, whose daughter was now gravely ill in the local hospital. My husband, a dedicated employee named Michael Reed, was under so much stress. I was just so worried about him. And about the mounting medical bills. I didn't mention Chloe. I didn't mention the empty bank account. I just painted a picture of a devoted family facing a crisis. The HR woman was sympathetic. She pulled up Michael's file. Oh, dear, she said. His emergency contact information is for a Ms. Chloe Saunders. Yes, I said, my voice catching just right. She's the widow of his best friend. He's been taking care of her. He's such a good man. So good. Sometimes I think he forgets to take care of himself and us. The seed was planted. My next stop was a project site Michael was supposed to be managing. I found his second in command, a gruff, older man named Frank. I introduced myself and asked if he had seen Michael. Frank scowled. Haven't seen him in 2 days. Left early on Friday. Didn't show up yesterday. Said he had a family emergency. Hope everything's alright. His daughter is in the ICU. I said softly. Frank's expression changed instantly from annoyance to concern. His daughter? How? He didn't say anything about his daughter. He just said Chloe needed him. He shook his head, looking disgusted. That woman has him wrapped around her little finger. The second seed was planted. By the time I left the city that evening to get back to the hospital, the whispers would have already started. The story of the hardworking manager, his sick daughter, his loyal wife, and the mysterious widow who was always by his side. I wasn't just fighting for my daughter anymore. I was fighting for my dignity. And I was just getting started. The next few days were a strange, dual existence. By day, I was the devoted mother, sitting vigil by Lily's bedside in the quiet, tense atmosphere of the PICU. I read her stories, sang her lullabies, and held her small, limp hand, whispering promises that I would make everything right. Her condition was slowly, painstakingly, improving. Her oxygen levels were stabilizing, and the doctors were cautiously optimistic. Each small step forward felt like a monumental victory. By night, I was a strategist. In the quiet solitude of my cheap motel room, I used my phone to piece together the life Michael had built without me. I became a detective of my own broken marriage. Social media was a treasure trove. Chloe's profile was private, but her friends were not. I found pictures from company parties, weekend trips to the mountains, and cozy dinners. There they were, Michael and Chloe. Always standing a little too close. A little too comfortable. In one photo from a charity gala, he had his arm around her waist, her head resting on his shoulder. They looked like a power couple. They looked happy. They looked like a family. Mason was often in the pictures too, grinning, holding Michael's hand. He was playing the role of a father to another man's son, while his own daughter was hundreds of miles away. The anger I felt wasn't a hot, flashing fire anymore. It was a cold, dense weight in the pit of my stomach. It was fuel. A week after I arrived in Charlotte, Lily was moved out of the ICU and into a regular pediatric room. She was still weak, still tethered to an oxygen monitor, but she was breathing on her own. She was going to be okay. The relief was so overwhelming it brought me to my knees in the hospital chapel, where I wept for the first time since this ordeal began. They were tears of gratitude, but also tears of grief for the life that was gone forever. Michael had visited a few times, always for brief, awkward encounters. He'd bring a stuffed animal for Lily, ask the nurses a few questions, and then make an excuse to leave. He never came alone. Chloe was always with him, a silent, sorrowful shadow lingering in the doorway. She would offer me a weak, pitying smile, as if I were the outsider in this drama. The power dynamic was clear. She was the lady of the manor, graciously allowing the scullery maid a moment with the master. They had perfected their act. He was a dutiful protector, she the grieving widow. Together, they were untouchable. I knew I couldn't fight them on their terms. I couldn't appeal to Michael's heart, because he had already given it to her. I couldn't reason with Chloe, because her entire existence was built on manipulation. I had to change the game. The day Lily was cleared to leave the hospital was the day I made my move. Michael had arranged to pay the remaining hospital bill. He probably thought that would be the end of it, that I would take my daughter, crawl back to my broken life in Hollow Creek, and leave him to his noble sacrifice. He underestimated me. Instead of driving home, I drove back to Croft Development. This time, I didn't go to HR. I went straight to the top floor. The executive assistant, a sharp woman named Sarah, tried to stop me. "Mr. Croft is in a meeting," she said, her voice polite but firm. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," I said calmly. "But he'll want to see me. Please tell him that Eleanor Reed is here, and my daughter has just been released from the hospital." I made sure to say it loud enough for the people nearby to hear. Sarah's eyes flickered with recognition. The whispers had done their work. She hesitated for a moment, then picked up her phone. A minute later, the doors to Julian Croft's office opened. His office was vast, with a panoramic view of the city. He stood by the window, a tall, imposing figure in a perfectly tailored suit. He wasn't handsome in a conventional way, but he radiated an aura of quiet power and intelligence. "Mrs. Reed," he said, his voice even. "Please, have a seat. I was sorry to hear about your daughter. I trust she is recovering well?" "She is. Thank you," I said, sitting in one of the leather chairs opposite his desk. "And thank you for seeing me. I know you're a busy man. My company's greatest asset is its people," he said, sitting down. "When one of them is in crisis, it becomes my business. I understand your husband has been distracted lately." It was an opening, a test. He wanted to see what I would do with it. The old Elena would have defended her husband, made excuses for him. The new Elena went on the offensive. "Mr. Croft, my husband is a good man, but he's being manipulated," I began, my voice steady and measured. "He's drowning in guilt over the death of his friend, David Saunders, and David's widow is taking advantage of that. She has isolated him from his family, drained her life savings, and is now jeopardizing his career." I laid it all out. The empty bank account, the lies, the way Chloe had positioned herself as a center of Michael's life, pushing me and Lily to the periphery. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I presented the facts as if I were delivering a business report. Cold, logical, and undeniable. Julian listened intently, his fingers steepled under his chin, his dark eyes never leaving my face. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, the silence in the room was heavy. "You paint a very clear picture, Mrs. Reed," he said finally, "and it corroborates certain performance issues I've been seeing with Michael. Missed deadlines, budget overruns, a general lack of focus." He paused. "What is it you want from me?" This was a critical moment. "I don't want you to fire him," I said. and I saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes. He loves his work. It's the one part of his life that woman hasn't completely destroyed yet. But he needs a wake-up call. And I need a job. He raised an eyebrow. A job? My daughter needs follow-up care. I can't go back to Hollow Creek right now. Our home was damaged in the flood. And the life we had there is gone. I need to stay in Charlotte. And I need to be able to support my child. I saw on your company website that you have an opening in the accounting department. I have a degree in business administration. I managed the books for our local co-op for 5 years before I had Lily. I'm a hard worker. I'm a fast learner. And I'm incredibly motivated. He was silent for a long time, studying me. I could feel him weighing the risks. The complications of hiring his employee's estranged wife. It was a messy, unconventional request. This would create a complicated work environment. He said slowly, "Life is complicated, Mr. Croft." I replied, holding his gaze. "I'm not looking for an easy path. I'm looking for a fair one. I'm not asking for a handout. I'm asking for a chance to prove myself." He stood up and walked back to the window, looking out at the city below. "The HR department handles all hiring," he said, his back to me. "However, I can authorize an expedited interview process. The final decision will be based on your qualifications and your performance in the interview. I can't promise you anything more than that. That's all I'm asking for," I said, standing up. Hope, real and fierce, surged through me. "One more thing. Mrs. Reed," he said, turning back to face me. His expression was unreadable. "If you were hired, your personal life stays out of this office. I run a business, not a soap opera. Am I understood?" "Perfectly," I said. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Croft." I walked out of that office with my head held high. I had faced the king in his castle and walked away with a key to the gate. The interview was 3 days later. It was a panel of 3 serious-looking accountants who grilled me on everything, from payroll regulations to financial forecasting. Michael had taught me a lot about the construction business over the years, about bids and budgets and profit margins. I used that knowledge, combined it with my own experience, and answered every question they threw at me. I was prepared. I was professional. And I was determined. I got the call the next day. The job was mine. I found a small, 2-bedroom apartment in a modest suburb, a place with good schools and a park nearby. It was a far cry from the life of luxury Chloe was living in Michael's company-sponsored high-rise. But it was ours. It was a home I had made for me and my daughter, on my own terms. My first day at Croft Development was surreal. I was assigned to a cubicle in a sea of identical workstations. The work was challenging, but I loved it. I loved the order of the numbers, the clean logic of the spreadsheets. It was a world away from the emotional chaos of my personal life. Michael found out I was working there when he saw me in the cafeteria. The look on his face was a mixture of shock, disbelief, and a dark, simmering anger. He cornered me by the coffee machine. "What the hell are you doing here, Elena?" he hissed, keeping his voice low. "I work here," I said calmly, stirring cream into my coffee. "You work here? How? You can't just decide to work here." "I interviewed for a job and I was the most qualified candidate," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "It's called earning a living. Michael, you should try it sometime, instead of letting your mistress spend all your money." His face flushed a deep red. "Don't you dare talk about Chloe like that. And don't you dare bring your drama into my workplace. This is my workplace now too," I said, my voice as cold as ice. "And a piece of advice, you should be more worried about your own drama. People are starting to talk. They're wondering why their senior project manager spends more time chauffeuring a widow around town than he does on his actual projects." I gave him a sweet, fake smile. "Have a good day, Michael." I walked away, leaving him sputtering in my wake. The first battle was won. But I knew the war was far from over. Chloe would not take this lying down. She had worked hard to build her comfortable life on the ruins of mine. She wouldn't let the inconvenient wife with a new job and a spine of steel get in her way. I had just painted a giant target on my back. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that she was already taking aim. Chloe didn't make her move immediately. She was smarter than that. For the first few weeks, it was a cold war fought with passive aggression and psychological games. She began visiting the office more frequently, always under the guise of bringing Michael lunch, or having him look over some confusing piece of mail. She would glide through the accounting department, her expensive perfume lingering in the air long after she was gone. She stopped by my cubicle, her expression a mask of sweet concern. "Elena, dear," she'd say, her voice just loud enough for my nearby colleagues to hear. "How are you settling in? It must be so difficult, juggling a new job and being a single mother. If you ever need anything at all, you know Michael and I are here for you." Every word was a perfectly crafted dart. Single mother. Difficult. We are here for you. She was framing me as a charity case, a struggling woman being graciously supported by her estranged husband and his benevolent companion. She was reinforcing her narrative, casting herself as a saint and me as a struggling, slightly pathetic wife who couldn't keep her man. My colleagues were polite but distant. I was a curiosity, a piece of office gossip made real. I kept my head down, focusing on my work. I learned the company's systems inside and out. I was the first one in the office and the last one to leave. I made myself indispensable. My boss, a no-nonsense woman named Linda, started noticing. She began giving me more complex projects, tasks that required a sharp eye and a meticulous mind. I completed every one flawlessly. I was building my reputation, brick by brick, on a foundation of competence, not pity. The annual company picnic was held in a sprawling park on a sunny Saturday in October. It was a mandatory fun event, filled with three-legged races, lukewarm hot dogs, and forced corporate cheer. I had no desire to go, but Linda had made it clear that attendance was expected. It was a chance to foster team spirit. I knew it was really a chance for a new kind of battlefield. I dressed Lily in a simple sundress and put her hair in pigtails. I wore jeans and a plain t-shirt. I wanted us to look like what we were, a mother and daughter trying to enjoy a day at the park. Michael, Chloe, and Mason arrived like they were royalty. Chloe was wearing a pristine white linen dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Michael was in crisp chinos and a polo shirt, looking every bit the successful executive. They had the effortless glow of a happy, wealthy family. They set up a large, checkered blanket in a prime spot near the swing set, surrounded by a gourmet picnic basket. I tried to keep my distance, helping Lily with the sandcastles and pushing her on the swings. But the park was only so big. Inevitably, our paths crossed. It happened near the swing set. Lily was soaring back and forth, her laughter echoing in the warm air. Mason, who had been sulking on the edge of the playground, suddenly ran over. "It's my turn," he demanded, grabbing the chain of Lily's swing. "Mason, be nice," Lily said. "You can have it after me." "No, I want it now," he yelled, and with a sudden, vicious shove, he pushed her. It happened in slow motion. Lily wasn't prepared for it. She lost her balance, her small hands slipping from the chains. She tumbled sideways, landing hard on the packed dirt and wood chips. A sickening crack echoed in the air, followed by a piercing scream. I was there in a heartbeat, scooping her into my arms. Her left arm was bent at an unnatural angle, and her face was contorted in agony. Rage, pure and primal, surged through me. Chloe and Michael came running over, their faces a picture of concern. "Oh my goodness," Chloe gasped, putting a hand to her chest. "What happened? Did she fall?" "She didn't fall," I said, my voice shaking with fury as I glared at Mason, who was now hiding behind his mother's legs. "She was pushed." "What?" Michael said, looking confused. "Mason wouldn't do that. It was an accident," Chloe insisted, pulling her son closer. "He was just playing. Weren't you, sweetie? You didn't mean to hurt her." "I'm not a liar, Chloe," I seethed. "I saw him. He pushed her. Hard." My accusation hung in the air. A small crowd of our colleagues had started to gather, their barbecue forgotten. This was far more interesting. "Now, Elena, let's not overreact," Michael said, stepping forward, taking on the role of the calm mediator. "Kids get rough sometimes. I'm sure Mason didn't mean any harm." "Didn't mean any harm?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Look at her arm, Michael. It's broken. Is that what you call not meaning any harm?" Just then, Julian Croft and his son, a quiet boy named Alex who was about Mason's age, walked over. Julian had seen the commotion from the executive tent. "What's going on here?" he asked, his calm voice cutting through the tension. "It's just a misunderstanding, Julian," Michael said quickly, trying to smooth things over. "The kids were playing, and Lily took a little tumble. That's not what happened." A small voice said. We all turned. It was Alex, Julian's son. He was looking at his father, his expression serious. I saw it. Dad, he said. That boy. He pointed a small finger at Mason. Pushed her. He did it on purpose. The silence was absolute. Chloe's face went white. Michael looked like he had been punched in the stomach. His lie had been exposed. Not by me, but by the CEO's son. Before anyone could react, another voice spoke up. It was Frank, the site foreman, who was standing nearby. Kid's right, he grunted, wiping mustard from his mouth. I saw it too. The little brat shoved her clean off the swing. The narrative was broken. The image of the perfect, misunderstood family was shattered. Chloe's eyes darted around, looking for an escape. Michael just stood there, speechless, his face a mask of shame and disbelief. He had been caught, red-handed, lying to his boss to protect his mistress's son over his own injured daughter. Julian's gaze was like granite. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He looked from his son to Frank, then to Mason. And finally, his eyes settled on Michael. The disappointment in his expression was more damning than any tirade. Elena, he said, his voice soft but clear. Take your daughter to the nearest urgent care. Send the bill to my assistant. We'll cover it. He then turned his full attention to Michael. Michael, my office. Monday morning, 9 a.m. He didn't say another word. He just took his son's hand and walked away. The crowd dispersed, muttering amongst themselves. Chloe started crying, the crocodile tears flowing freely. Oh, Michael, I'm so sorry. He didn't mean it. You have to believe me. But I wasn't listening. I was already moving, carrying my sobbing daughter towards the parking lot. The picnic was over. The doctor at the urgent care confirmed it, a clean break in her ulna. They put her arm in a bright pink cast, which Lily, through her tears, thought was very beautiful. As I sat in the sterile examination room, holding my daughter, a strange sense of calm settled over me. Chloe had made her move, and she had overplayed her hand. She had allowed her spoiled son's cruelty to expose the rotten core of the life she had built. And in doing so, she had handed me the one thing I couldn't have achieved on my own. She had made Michael look like a liar and a fool in front of the one man whose opinion mattered. Monday morning, I was at my desk by 7:30. The office was buzzing with the weekend's gossip. People looked at me differently now. The pity was gone, replaced by a new respect. I was no longer just Michael's estranged wife. I was the woman who had stood up to him, the mother whose daughter had been vindicated by the CEO's own son. At precisely 9 a.m., I saw Michael walk towards Julian Croft's office. He looked like a man walking to his own execution. He was in there for over an hour. When he came out, his face was ashen. He walked past my cubicle without a word, his eyes fixed on the floor. Later that day, an official company-wide email went out from HR. Subject: organizational restructuring. Effective immediately. Frank Miller has been promoted to Senior Project Manager for the Downtown Tower project. Michael Reed will be transitioning to a new role as Site Supervisor. REPORTING directly to Mr. Miller. It was a public execution. A demotion. He hadn't been fired, but he had been stripped of his title, his authority, and his prestige. He was no longer a white-collar executive. He was a blue-collar supervisor. His salary would be slashed. The cushy high-rise apartment with the city view would be gone. The foundation of the life he had built with Chloe had just been dynamited. I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. It wasn't joy. It was justice. But I also knew this was a dangerous turning point. A cornered animal is the most vicious. Michael had lost face. Chloe had lost her comfortable lifestyle. They had lost, and I knew they would blame me. Their humiliation would curdle into a desire for revenge. The Cold War was over. A hot war was about to begin, and I had a feeling it was going to be far more brutal, and far more costly, than I could possibly imagine. Chloe was a survivor. She had lost her husband, but she had managed to secure a new protector and a life of ease. A woman like that doesn't just give up. She finds a new weapon, a new ally, a new way to win. And as I sat at my desk, the neatly organized numbers on my screen blurring before my eyes, I had a sinking feeling that I had just become the single biggest obstacle. The fallout from Michael's demotion was immediate and brutal. The first casualty was the apartment. Within a week, he received notice from the company that he no longer qualified for the executive housing unit. They had to be out by the end of the month. I found this out not from Michael, but from the hushed, gleeful gossip that spread through the office like wildfire. I could picture the scene in that beautiful high-rise, Chloe, faced with the sudden, stark reality of packing boxes, her world of effortless luxury crumbling around her. The life she had so carefully constructed was being dismantled, piece by piece. Their new apartment was in a drab, sprawling complex on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place with peeling paint and thin walls. It was a steep, humiliating fall from grace. Michael's reduced salary meant the designer clothes, the gourmet groceries, and Mason's expensive private school were all under threat. The financial pressure began to squeeze them, and the cracks in their perfect facade started to show. Michael became a ghost at work. He was withdrawn, sullen. He avoided the main office whenever possible, spending his days on the construction site, his face grim under a hard hat. The few times I did see him, he looked haggard. The confidence was gone, replaced by a permanent weariness. He looked like a man carrying an impossible weight. Part of me, a small, foolish part that still remembered the boy I fell in love with, felt a pang of pity, but I quickly snuffed it out. This was a prison of his own making. Chloe, on the other hand, did not fade into the background. She escalated. Deprived of her financial power, she turned to the only weapon she had left, emotional warfare. She began a campaign to paint me as a vindictive shrew who had destroyed a good man's career, out of jealousy. She would call Michael at the office, her voice a hysterical sob that was audible even from a few feet away. I can't do this. Michael. Mason is being teased at his new school. This apartment is horrible. It's all because of her. She won't be happy until she's ruined us completely. She even tried to ambush me in the parking garage after work one day. She cornered me by my car, her eyes red-rimmed and wild. Are you happy now? She spat, her voice a venomous whisper. You got what you wanted. You ruined him. You took a good, honorable man who was trying to do the right thing, and you tore him down. I hope you're proud of yourself. The only person who ruined Michael is Michael himself, I said, my voice cold and steady. And you, Chloe, you helped. I loved him. She cried, a single, perfect tear tracing a path down her cheek. I gave him a home when he was lost in his grief. You were never there for him. You were happy to stay in your little hick town while he was working himself to the bone for you. I was raising his daughter, I said, my hand tightening on my car keys. And I was waiting for him to keep his promises, something you clearly know nothing about. Her face hardened, the mask of the tragic victim slipping to reveal the cold fury beneath. You think you've won, don't you? She hissed. You think you can just waltz in here with your sad story and take everything. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. She was right. It wasn't over. I knew she was desperate, and a desperate woman is capable of anything. I just didn't realize how far she was willing to go. The company's biggest project was the West Market Square development, a massive undertaking to revitalize a neglected part of the city. It was Julian Croft's passion project, a legacy-defining venture worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The competition for the main contract had been fierce, but Croft Development had a superior plan and a solid financial strategy. The final bidding presentation was just a few weeks away, and the entire office was in a state of high alert. Because of my performance, Linda had assigned me to the project's finance team. My job was to help analyze cost projections and prepare the final budget proposal. It was a huge responsibility, and I threw myself into it, working late nights, poring over spreadsheets until my eyes burned. It was my chance to prove, once and for all, that I was more than just a piece of office gossip. One evening, I was working late, alone in the quiet accounting department. I was cross-referencing supplier bids when I noticed a foul discrepancy. A major subcontractor's bid seemed unusually low, almost too good to be true. It was just the kind of detail that could throw off the entire budget if it wasn't accurate. I made a note to flag it for the project lead in the morning. As I was packing up to leave, I saw a flicker of movement at the far end of the office. It was Michael. He was standing by his old desk, the one that now belonged to Frank Miller. He was looking at the computer, his back to me. It was strange. He had no reason to be in the main office, especially not at this hour. He seemed to sense my presence and turned around, startled. Elena, he said, his face pale. I forgot some personal files on my old hard drive. Frank said I could come get them. His excuse was plausible, but his demeanor was not. He looked guilty. Like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar, he quickly logged off the computer and walked away, his footsteps echoing in the empty office. I had a sick feeling in my stomach. Something was wrong. The feeling lingered all the way home. After I tucked Lily into bed, I sat in my small living room, the city lights twinkling outside my window. I couldn't shake the image of Michael at that desk. Why would he be there? At night? Looking at Frank's computer? And then, a horrible thought began to form in my mind. A cold, terrifying puzzle piece clicking into place. The project files. The final bid. Everything was on that computer. Chloe's words echoed in my head. This isn't over. She had lost her comfortable life. She blamed me. She blamed the company. What better way to get revenge than to destroy the one thing Julian Croft cared about most? What if she wasn't just trying to win Michael back? What if she was trying to burn the whole kingdom to the ground? But she couldn't do it alone. She would need an ally. Someone with a grudge against Croft Development. Someone with the resources to use stolen information. My fingers trembled as I typed a name into my phone search browser, Vance Holdings. They were the main competitor for the West Market Square project. Their CEO was a young, notoriously ruthless heir named Ethan Vance. I scrolled through articles about him. Tales of hostile takeovers and corporate espionage. He was exactly the kind of man a woman like Chloe would turn to. The pieces were all there. A constellation of dark possibilities. Chloe's desperation. Michael's guilt and weakness. Ethan Vance's ambition. It was a toxic cocktail. And I was sure Croft Development was about to be poisoned. But I had no proof. It was just a feeling. A paranoid theory born from my own distrust. If I went to Julian Croft with this, I would look like the vengeful ex-wife, trying to get her husband fired. I needed something concrete. The next day at work, I was on edge. I watched Michael like a hawk. But he was a closed book. He did his job, spoke to no one, and left the moment his shift was over. That evening, I did something I never thought I'd be capable of. I lied to my babysitter, telling her I had to work an all-nighter. After she left, I got in my car. I didn't drive home. I drove to the drab apartment complex where Michael and Chloe now lived. I parked across the street, in the shadows of a large oak tree, and I waited. My heart pounded in my chest. This was crazy. I was a small-town mom, not a private investigator. What was I even doing here? For 2 hours, nothing happened. I was about to give up, to chalk it all up to my overactive imagination. And then, a sleek, black car I recognized from the business journals pulled up in front of the building. A man in a sharp suit got out of the driver's side. It was Ethan Vance. He didn't go inside. He stood by his car, looking at his phone. A minute later, the front door of the apartment building opened. It wasn't Michael who came out. It was Chloe. She was dressed to the nines, wearing a tight black dress and heels. She looked completely out of place in the rundown parking lot. She walked quickly to the car, her eyes darting around nervously. She handed Ethan Vance a small, slim ejecta USB drive. He took it, gave her a curt nod, and she scurried back inside. He got back in his car and drove away. The entire exchange took less than 30 seconds. I sat in my car, frozen, my hands gripping the steering wheel. I had seen it. I had my proof. She had done it. She had stolen the company's most valuable secret and sold it to the enemy. And she had used Michael, my weak, foolish husband, to do it. The sick feeling in my stomach was back. But this time it was mixed with a cold, terrifying clarity. This was bigger than a broken marriage now. This was corporate espionage. This could destroy the company, cost hundreds of people their jobs, and ruin Julian Croft. And I was the only one who knew. I took a deep, shaky breath. The woman from Hollow Creek would have been terrified. She would have run. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I started the car, my mind racing, formulating a new plan. Chloe had just declared all-out war, and she had no idea that I had just captured her queen. The drive back to my apartment was a blur. My mind was a whirlwind of images, Chloe in her black dress, the glint of the USB drive in the dim parking lot light, the smug look on Ethan Vance's face. I felt a surge of adrenaline so powerful it made my hands shake. I had them. But having the knowledge and knowing what to do with it were two very different things. My first instinct was to go straight to Julian Croft. I could lay it all out, tell him what I saw. But then what? It would be my word against hers. Chloe would deny everything. She would weep and claim I was a scorned woman trying to frame her. Michael, trapped in his web of guilt and misplaced loyalty, would likely back her up, and Ethan Vance, a man like that would have an army of lawyers to bury any accusation under a mountain of legal paperwork. I could end up looking like a hysterical, unreliable employee, and the core problem stolen data would remain. No, a direct assault was too risky. I had to be smarter. I had to think like Chloe. I had to be manipulative, strategic, and one step ahead. When I got home, I didn't sleep. I sat at my small kitchen table with a fresh legal pad and a pen. The city lights a distant, blurry backdrop. I replayed the scene in the parking lot over and over in my head. Chloe had been nervous. She had been rushed. A professional would have been calmer, more discreet. She was an amateur, driven by greed and revenge. Amateurs make mistakes. What was on that drive? It had to be the West Market Square project files. Everything. The architectural plans, the logistical timelines, and most importantly, the financial data I had been working on, the detailed cost analysis, the supplier bids, the profit margin calculations, our entire bidding strategy. With that information, Vance Holdings could undercut our bid by a single dollar and win the contract. They wouldn't even have to do the hard work. They could just copy our plan and offer it for slightly less. It was a checkmate move. Unless the information they had was wrong. A new plan began to form. A risky and audacious gamble. The final bid submission was in 1 week. The data Chloe had stolen was the current, accurate version. But what if it wasn't the final version? The next morning, I walked into the office with a newfound sense of purpose. I went straight to Linda, my department head. "Linda," I said, my voice filled with a carefully practiced tone of professional concern. "I was double-checking the subcontractor bids for the West Market Square project last night, and I found something that worries me." I showed her the file I had noticed a few nights before, a bid that seemed too good to be true. "This bid from Sterling Steel," I said, pointing to a line on the spreadsheet. "It's almost 15% lower than any of their competitors. I think it might be a typo. Or they've made a mistake in their calculation. If we base our entire budget on this number, and they can't honor it, our whole financial structure for the project could collapse after we've won the bid." Linda frowned, her sharp eyes scanning the numbers. "You're right," she said slowly. "That is a significant risk." "Good catch, Elena." I was thinking. I continued, pressing my advantage. "Perhaps we should prepare an alternate budget, a plan B, one that uses the second lowest bidder's numbers. It would make our overall bid higher, but it would be safer, more realistic. We could keep it as a contingency." Linda nodded, her expression thoughtful. "That's proactive thinking. I like it. But Mr. Croft wants our bid to be as aggressive as possible. He won't like a higher number." "I agree," I said. "We should proceed with the current, more aggressive budget as our primary submission. Plan A. But having a fully prepared, more conservative plan B ready to go, it's just good business. It protects the company in a worst-case scenario." It was the perfect corporate argument. It wasn't based on emotion or suspicion. It was based on risk management and financial prudence. Linda bought it completely. "All right," she said. "Draw it up. But keep it quiet. We don't want to create any unnecessary panic. Label it WSQ Alternate Financials and save it on the secure server. Only you, me, and Mr. Croft will have access. For the next 3 days." I worked feverishly. I created a complete, parallel financial plan for the project. Plan B. It was meticulously detailed, professionally formatted, and looked identical to the original plan in every way except for the most important one, the final number. It was based on more expensive suppliers and included higher contingency funds, making the total project cost nearly 10% higher than Plan A. It was a strong, safe bid, but it was not a winning one if Vance Holdings had our original numbers. While I was building our secret weapon, I was also setting a trap. I went back to the original project file, Plan A, the one I knew Chloe had stolen. I opened the master spreadsheet, the one with all the final calculations, and I made a single, tiny, almost undetectable change. I found an obscure formula in a cell that calculated the total cost of raw materials, and I added a small multiplication error. It was a flaw that wouldn't be obvious from a quick glance, but it would subtly inflate the final bid number by a few $1,000,000, making it appear slightly less competitive than it actually was. It was a digital breadcrumb, a Trojan horse hidden inside the data. My heart was pounding as I clicked save. I had just deliberately corrupted the company's most important file. If I was wrong about Chloe, If this was all in my head, I had just committed career suicide. The day of the final bid presentation arrived. The air in the office was thick with anticipation. Julian Croft, Frank Miller, Linda, and a few other key executives were heading to the city's development authority for the closed-door meeting where both companies would present their final proposals. I was not on the presentation team, but my work was done. The trap was set. I saw Michael in the hallway. He was there to see the team off, a pathetic gesture of his former importance. He looked terrible, with dark circles under his eyes. He caught my eye, and for a moment, he looked like he wanted to say something. But he didn't. He just gave a weak, defeated nod and walked away. The presentation was scheduled for 2 p.m. The entire office fell into a strange, suspended silence. No one was working. Everyone was just waiting. At 2:30, my desk phone rang. It was Julian Croft's assistant, Sarah. Elena, she said, her voice crisp and urgent. Mr. Croft needs you to email him the file name WSQ alternate financials immediately. He needs it now. My breath caught in my throat. Is everything okay? Just send the file. Please, she said, and hung up. My hands flew across the keyboard. I found the file, my carefully constructed Plan B, attached it to an email, and hit send. My part was done. Now, all I could do was wait and pray that my gamble had worked. Hours passed. The sun began to set, casting long, orange shadows across the office. People started to pack up, the nervous energy of the day giving way to a weary resignation. There had been no news. No news was usually bad news. Just as I was about to leave, my phone buzzed. It was an unfamiliar number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello. Is this Eleanor Reed? A man's voice asked. It was a voice I recognized from the news articles. It was Ethan Vance. I was so shocked. I couldn't speak. I assume your silence means yes. He continued, his voice dripping with condescending amusement. I just wanted to call and offer my condolences. It must be tough, working so hard on a losing bid. Your numbers were good. I'll give you that. Very thorough, but just not quite good enough. My blood ran cold. He was toying with me. He knew who I was. What do you want? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Oh, nothing. He chuckled. I just thought you should know that your company's little plan backfired. That last-minute file switch, very clever. Very dramatic. But we were prepared for it. We had our own contingencies. We still won. Croft is out. Vance is in. And you, well, you're out of a job, I imagine. Tell your pathetic ex-husband I said hello. And tell his little girlfriend she should have asked for more money. He hung up. I stood there, phone in my hand, the dial tone buzzing in my ear. I had failed. My clever plan, my risky gamble, it had all been for nothing. He had seen it coming. He had outsmarted me. We had lost. I had not only failed to save the company, but I had likely implicated myself in some way. Julian would think I had been working with them all along. I stumbled out of the office in a daze. The celebratory mood that Vance must be enjoying was a bitter pill to swallow. I had put everything on the line, and I had lost it all. I thought of Lily, of our small apartment, of the fragile new life I had tried to build. It was all about to come crashing down. Chloe had won. She had gotten her revenge, and she had taken me down with her. The cold reality of my failure washed over me, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt utterly and completely defeated. I drove home on autopilot, Ethan Vance's smug voice echoing in my head. We still won. The words were a death sentence. I pictured myself in Julian Croft's office the next morning, not as a valued employee, but as a suspect, the woman who had access to both financial plans, the estranged wife with a motive for revenge. It was a perfect frame. Chloe hadn't just sold the data, she had set me up to take the fall. When I walked into my apartment, the air was heavy with the smell of failure. Lily was already asleep, her small face peaceful in the soft glow of her nightlight. I stood in her doorway, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest, and a wave of despair so profound washed over me that my knees felt weak. I had fought so hard for her, to give her a stable life, and now I had gambled it all away. I was going to lose my job. We would lose our home. We would have to go back to Hollow Creek with nothing but shame. I barely slept that night, my mind tormented by a relentless slideshow of my mistakes. The next morning, I dressed for work like a condemned prisoner choosing their final outfit. I chose a simple, Dark gray dress. It felt appropriate for a funeral. My own. I walked into the office expecting to be met by security, to be told to pack my things. Instead, the office was strangely quiet. A tense, funereal silence hanging in the air. People avoided my eyes, whispering amongst themselves as I passed. They already knew. The news of the lost contract had spread. I sat at my desk, my computer screen dark, and I waited. At 9:30, the summons came. Sarah's voice on the phone was devoid of its usual warmth. Mr. Croft would like to see you in his office. Elena. This was it. I stood up, my legs feeling like lead, and made the long walk to the executive suite. My entire future would be decided in the next 10 minutes. I knocked on the heavy oak door. Come in. Julian's voice called out. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. Julian was standing by the window, looking out at the city, just as he had been the first time I came to this office. But today, his posture was different. It wasn't relaxed or confident. It was rigid. He turned to face me. His expression was impossible to read a mask of cold professionalism. Linda, my boss, was there too, sitting in one of the leather chairs, her face grim. Elena, Julian began, his voice flat. Please, sit down. I sat, my hands clenched in my lap. I decided I wouldn't make excuses. I would tell him the truth, everything I saw, everything I suspected. He probably wouldn't believe me, but I would go down with my dignity intact. Mr. Croft, I started, my voice surprisingly steady. Before you say anything, I need to tell you something. He held up a hand, stopping me. First, he said, his voice cutting through the air like glass, I would like to offer you my sincerest congratulations. I stared at him, my mind unable to process the words. Congratulations? Was this some kind of cruel joke? He saw the utter confusion on my face, and for the first time, a flicker of something amusement, relief, broke through his stoic facade. A slow smile spread across his face. Congratulations, Elena, he repeated, his voice warmer now, on saving this company. The room seemed to spin. Linda was smiling too, a wide, genuine grin. I looked from her face to his, completely lost. I don't understand. I stammered. Ethan Vance, he called me last night. He said we lost. He said he won. Julian chuckled. A deep, rich sound that filled the room. Oh, Ethan won. All right. He won exactly what we wanted him to win. He walked over to his desk and picked up a thick, bound report. He tossed it on the coffee table in front of me. The title read, Geotechnical Survey Report, West Market Square Sector 7. This report came in 2 days ago. Julian explained. Our survey team found a significant issue with the substrate in the primary construction zone. It's unstable. Building a skyscraper on it would be catastrophic without extensive and prohibitively expensive reinforcement. The project, as originally designed, is a financial black hole. I stared at the report, then back at him. My mind was racing, trying to catch up. So, the data Chloe stole. The data she stole was our original, optimistic plan, based on the initial surveys. He said, a plan that, as of 2 days ago, we knew was completely unviable. When Ethan Vance presented his bid yesterday, he presented a modified version of our flawed plan. He was so confident, so arrogant. He didn't even bother to do his own deep-level geotechnical survey. He walked right into the trap. But what about Plan B? I asked, my voice a whisper. The file you had me send. That, Julian said, a look of genuine admiration in his eyes, was the masterstroke. When Vance presented his numbers, they were, as expected, just slightly lower than the numbers in our stolen Plan A. That's when I knew for certain that he had our data. So, I stood up, and I told the development authority that due to a last-minute internal review, we had a revised proposal. Then, I presented your Plan B. Linda chimed in. Your Plan B was brilliant, Elena. It was conservative, safe, and financially sound. It didn't have the flashy profit margins of Vance's proposal, but it was honest. It was a plan built on reality, not fantasy. The authority was impressed by our transparency and our fiscal responsibility. Julian continued. They saw Vance's bid for what it was, reckless and over-leveraged. Then I showed them the geotechnical report. Game over. They awarded the contract to us. Not the original contract, but a revised one, based on your more realistic Plan B, with an additional budget to cover the foundational work. Vance Holdings is now legally obligated to proceed with their winning bid on a project that will almost certainly bankrupt them. The full weight of it all finally hit me. The phone call from Ethan. The smug taunts. It had all been a bluff. He had lost. Catastrophically. And his last petty act was to try and break my spirit before the truth came out. So the little error I put in the spreadsheet I began was a nice touch. Julian finished, smiling. It made Vance think he had an even bigger advantage than he did, which made him even more arrogant. He never saw the real trap until it had already sprung. I leaned back in the chair, a wave of relief so powerful it almost made me dizzy. I hadn't failed. I had won. We had won. How did you know? I asked him. How did you know to trust me? I didn't. Not completely. He admitted. But you came to me with logic, not just accusations. And more importantly, I had Frank pull the security logs for the main office. They showed Michael accessing the project files from Frank's computer late at night, a few hours before he claimed he was there to get personal files. Then, building security footage from his apartment complex showed Ethan Vance's car arriving late. That same night. You didn't just give me a theory, Elena. You gave me a trail. And it all led to the truth. He leaned forward, his expression serious now. Which brings us to the matter of your husband. He confessed everything this morning. Chloe conceived the entire plan. She convinced him that I had demoted him unfairly, that the company had betrayed him, and that this was his only way to get justice, and to get enough money to give her the life she deserved. He was a fool, and he was a pawn. But he was also a conspirator. I have terminated his employment, effective immediately. The company is prepared to press charges for corporate espionage. Michael, fired. Facing charges. My heart felt a pang of something. A sad, distant ache for the man he used to be. But he had made his choice. And Chloe? I asked. A cold, hard look entered Julian's eyes. Miss Saunders will soon discover that making an enemy of my company has consequences. Our legal team is very thorough. I imagine her life is about to become very complicated. He stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. Elena, your quick thinking and your courage saved this project, and likely this company. You have proven yourself to be an invaluable asset. Linda has recommended you for a promotion. Head of the project accounting division. The job is yours, if you want it. I was speechless. Head of a division. Just a few weeks ago, I was a desperate mother with $100 to my name. Now, yes, I said, my voice clear and strong. I want it. Good, he said, extending his hand. I shook it. His grip was firm, his eyes holding mine. It wasn't a handshake between a boss and an employee. It was a handshake between equals, between survivors. I walked out of that office not as a victim, not as a scorned wife, but as a victor. I had faced down my enemies, and I had won on my own terms. The battle was over. The kingdom was safe. And as I walked back to my desk, the whispers that followed me were no longer of gossip and pity. They were of awe and respect. The days that followed were a whirlwind. The news of Croft Development's victory, and the subsequent implosion of Vance Holdings' bid, became the talk of Charlotte's business community. Ethan Vance, humiliated and facing financial ruin, disappeared from the public eye. The company's stock plummeted. He had gambled everything on a stolen hand, never realizing the deck was stacked against him. The legal storm that broke over Chloe Saunders was swift and merciless. Croft Development's lawyers descended with the full force of the law. They filed a civil suit against her for conspiracy and tortious interference, seeking damages that far exceeded anything she could ever hope to pay. Her bank accounts were frozen. The media got wind of the story, painting her as a manipulative black widow who had seduced a weak man into betraying his company. Her carefully constructed world of victimhood was publicly and brutally dismantled. The last I heard, she had sold her designer clothes and handbags to pay her legal fees, and had moved back in with her parents in a different state. Her reputation in tatters. Michael's fate was sadder, and in a way, more pathetic. Faced with the threat of criminal charges and abandoned by the woman he had sacrificed everything for, he broke completely. He took a plea deal. In exchange for his full cooperation and testimony against Chloe, the company agreed not to press charges. He lost his career, his reputation, and his pension. He was a pariah in the industry he had dedicated his life to. He called me once, a few weeks after it was all over. His voice was hollow, a ghost of its former self. "Lena," he said, his voice cracking. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. "I know, Michael," I said. And for the first time, I felt no anger, only a profound, weary sadness. The man I had loved was well and truly gone, replaced by this broken stranger. I was a fool, he whispered. She made me believe that I was a hero, that I was saving her. But I wasn't. I was just a tool. And I threw away the only thing that was ever real. "You and Lily." "Yes, you did," I said, not unkindly. It was simply the truth. Can I see her?" he asked, his voice pleading. "Lily, I want to see my daughter." I thought for a long moment. My protective instinct screamed no. But then I thought of Lily. She deserved to have a father, even a flawed, broken one. He had made terrible mistakes, but he was still a part of her. "You can see her," I said finally. "On weekends. We'll arrange it. But Michael, it will never be the way it was. You need to understand that." "I know," he said, his voice thick with unshed tears. "Thank you, Elena, for everything." He found a job working for a small, local contractor back in West Virginia, not far from Hollow Creek. He was doing manual labor, swinging a hammer instead of managing a budget. It was a humbling, punishing penance. He saw Lily every other weekend. He was quiet and sad, but he was always gentle with her. He was trying, in his own broken way, to be a father again. I didn't know if I could ever forgive him, but for Lily's sake, I was willing to let him try to earn back a small piece of what he had thrown away. My own life, meanwhile, was blossoming in ways I never could have imagined. I excelled in my new role as head of project accounting. The work was demanding, but I thrived on the challenge. I bought a small townhouse in a quiet neighborhood with a little backyard, where Lily and I could plant a garden. It wasn't the sprawling land of Hollow Creek, but it was ours. We filled it with tomato plants and basil, a small patch of our old life transplanted into the new. I became a different woman. The timid, trusting wife from the mountains was gone, forged into someone stronger in the fires of betrayal and adversity. I was confident, respected, and self-reliant. I was happy. Julian and I developed a relationship built on mutual respect. He became a mentor, and then a friend. He was a divorced father himself, and he and his son, Alex, often joined Lily and me for weekend trips to the park or the science museum. I saw a different side of him outside the officia kind. Attentive father, a man with a quick wit and a surprising warmth beneath his stoic exterior. There was no dramatic declaration of love. It was a slow, quiet evolution. It was in the easy way we talked for hours over coffee. It was in the way he looked at me across a crowded room. A look of simple, profound appreciation. It was in the comfortable silence that could fall between us. A silence that wasn't empty, but full of understanding. One crisp autumn evening, about a year after the bidding war, Julian invited me and Lily over to his house for dinner. We sat on his back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Our children were chasing fireflies on the lawn, their laughter mingling with the sound of crickets. "You seem happy, Elena," he said, his voice soft. I looked at Lily, her face alight with joy as she ran through the grass, her pink cast long gone. I looked at the beautiful home around me, at the peaceful twilight, at the kind man sitting beside me, and I realized it was true. I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face. "I never thought I would be. Not like this. But I am." He reached over and gently took my hand. His touch was warm, steady. It wasn't a gesture of passion, but of partnership, of peace. "You deserve it," he said. "You fought for it." I thought back to the woman I was, standing in that muddy garden in Hollow Creek, her world so small and her heart so full of a naive, blind love. I had lost that world, and that loss had almost destroyed me. But in its place, I had built something new, something stronger, something real. I had found my own strength, my own voice, my own worth. The battle had been long and brutal, the wounds deep, but they had healed into scars that reminded me not of the pain I had endured, but of the strength I had discovered. My story wasn't a fairy tale. It was a testament to the fact that sometimes, The most beautiful gardens grow from the most scorched earth. And as Julian's hand tightened around mine, and the sound of my daughter's laughter filled the air, I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my soul, that I was finally, truly home.